Ron Poliquin, DoverLawOffices.com, your Dover employment and civil rights attorney. We're here to talk about some hot topics, mainly involved police misconduct. That was a hot video that we released as far as talking about bad cops. Recently there was a decision that came out by the Sixth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals saying flipping the bird, yes, giving a middle finger to the police is protected by the First Amendment. Although I wouldn't recommend it, they decided it was protected by the First Amendment, and that in fact, what happened in this case, this is a civil lawsuit of an individual suing a police officer individually. Basically what happened, police officer in Michigan pulls over a driver, cuts the driver a break by not giving him or her a speeding ticket. As the police officer is driving away, that individual gives the police officer the middle finger. Okay, police officer pulls this person over again and actually punishes that person for the middle finger by raising the ticket to a speeding ticket, the more harsher speeding ticket. So what happened in this case, though, is that the court said that the officer could not do that. That could in fact infringe on the driver's or the defendant's right to be free from unreasonable seizure under the Fourth Amendment, as well as her free speech rights under the First Amendment. And the court decided that any reasonable officer would know that a citizen who raises her middle finger engages in speech protected by the First Amendment. So there was clearly no basis for the officer to arrest this driver a second time, just solely based on the middle finger. Now, I'm going to give you a couple examples on police misconduct that could be civil lawsuits. Excessive force, right? When an officer's use of force is beyond the amount of is unreasonable. Whether the use of force was reasonable depends on the surrounding facts and circumstances of the case, on whether it's excessive force. If the amount of force was reasonable, it doesn't matter what the officer's intentions were. But the reverse is also true. If the officer had good intentions but the use is unreasonable, the excessive force claim will not be dismissed. So excessive force means that an officer cannot use force beyond what is necessary to detain the defendant. False arrest. Basically, to be able to prevail on a false arrest claim, the victim must show that the arresting officer lacked probable cause. That is, facts sufficient to cause a reasonable person to believe that a crime had occurred. It is not enough for the facts to be simply incorrect. They're used to even if the officer relied upon facts which later turns out to be false, the officer is not liable if he believed those facts were in fact accurate at the time. Other example of police misconduct claims, malicious prosecution. Basically, a malicious prosecution claim is when a claim that asserts that the officer wrongly deprived the victim of the 14th Amendment right to liberty. To win on this type of claim, you must prove four things. 1, the defendant police officer commenced the criminal proceeding. 2, the proceeding ended in the victim's favor. Usually that there's no conviction or it gets dismissed. 3, this is the most important one, that there was no probable cause. And 4, that the proceeding was brought with malice towards the victim. Usually what happens in these type of claims, you're going to have to show that there's some kind of falsehood, that either 1, that the police officer used or made up facts for an arrest, or 2, that he left out facts in order to arrest and provide prosecution in this case. In any case against a police officer, you must overcome the qualified immunity defense, meaning that in order to win a civil rights claim, an individual bringing a police misconduct claim must prove the actions of the police exceeded reasonable bounds, infringed the victim's constitutional rights, and produce some injury or damages. So these lawsuits can be very expensive. They can be very hard to prove, but in order for you to prove them, you're probably going to need the help of an experienced attorney. So if you want to get your case evaluated, if you think you've been a victim of police misconduct, either excessive force, false arrest, malicious prosecution, or maybe there's something else we're not talking about, please see an experienced attorney. So thank you very much for your time. Rob Poliquin, DoverLawOffices.com.